So today's video blog follows on from feedback I've received after doing an interview with Claire Riley on Teachers Podcast. And I've had quite a lot of people asking for a template of this way of assessing spelling that I do. That's the basics. So I'll go back to the beginning and explain what's going on. When I was doing my doctorate, one of the essays I had to write in the process was about truth. And what occurred to me was that there's a tremendous lack of truth in data. In particular, and I know I've probably mentioned this before in other videos, but when you look at a spelling score, it can say 5 out of 10, and it can be saying 5 out of 10 all year, and it looks like there's been absolutely no progress. And that's quite often not the reality. The reality is there is a lot of progress, but how is that measured? And this is something which in my work supporting Senkos, as they do their Nasenko award and things like that, I find, and with the leadership qualifications in middle and senior leadership, one of the things that often gets raised is how do we measure progress when the data in the systems we're supposed to use doesn't actually show any. And quite often it's because we've got small steps of progress and the overall picture is either a percentage or basically it just doesn't tell you. It doesn't tell you what you need to know. So in doing that, I devised something for specifically, bear in mind my main subject is English and I'm Senko, special needs, so I devised a way of assessing progress in people's writing, which included the spelling, and it actually started off just being about the spelling. And I remembered from my training in teaching dyslexics, looking at a breakdown of, if it's reading, you look at the types of reading errors they are, and the same is true with spelling. You look at the types of spelling errors. So I thought, well, that would be really useful if we can look at the types of spelling errors and see if there's been progress. So what I did is I decided I would do a 10-minute free write, and I would do it at the beginning of every term, and then you're actually assessing what they have retained rather than what you have just taught them. So at the beginning of a term, it's a fresh start, let's do it then. So what I did, I chose 10 minutes because even I can divide by 10 and I could work out the number of words per minute really easily. It also doesn't take up too much teacher time, both in delivering, in actually getting them to do the 10-minute free write, but also in terms of marking it in the way I'm going to explain. So it was a very economical way of doing this. So what it evolved into, because it grew, it started off just being about the spelling analysis, and then I realised there was so much more we could get from this, and I wanted to grab all the useful data that I could, as opposed to the data which quite frankly at times is useless. I mean, the 5 out of 10, 5 out of 10, 5 out of 10 is useless data, showing no progress. I wanted to know what was really going on. Also, as well as knowing where the progress is, it will highlight the areas that you need to focus on if you're doing an intervention or just in your general delivery of the subject. So knowing the minutiae was really important. So basically, there'd be a lesson at the start of a term, a couple of days in, just to get their brains back at being in school, but in an English lesson, and the lesson would involve firstly, sorry about the background noise, lots of chat about what sort of thing they might want to write about, because getting started can be a thing. So there would be some suggestions on the board, all sorts of things, just to sort of help people to get started, so that the getting started wasn't too big a deal. So then the children would write for exactly 10 minutes, no more. And at 10 minutes, pens down. Doesn't matter if you're in the middle of a sentence. Now, we realised that so that the children didn't get frustrated with that, we would do it in a separate book from everything else, so it became their free write book. That meant that they could continue from where they'd left off, if need be, but it also meant that we then had a record of progress, not just for that year, but for their entire time at the school. Because if it's done every term, and by term I mean the big terms, so after, when you go back in September, after the Christmas holidays, and after the Easter break, those are the times when we would do this. and you could see, oh look, they're handwriting, all this other stuff, handwriting, whatever. You could look at all of it. So when they've done their right, you have to do a word count, and this is where I really recommend that we don't leave this up to the children, because their word counting is not normally as accurate as teachers' word counting. So a simple circle somewhere saying how many words there are in total, and then the teacher to literally just put a dot under any misspelled words. That's all at that point, because you then need somebody who knows what they're looking for. No disrespect to the teacher, it may be the teacher, it could be, I used some TAs who have been trained up specially to understand what they were looking for, so they knew how to sort of mark it. So they would, so you just put a dot under it so you know that's the number, and then you just put a total number of errors. So that's the really basic bit. Really important to look out for homophones. If you're just looking generally, if you're scanning it rather than reading it, you'll miss out. But the other beauty is that because this isn't being marked like everything else, instead of the normal sort of feedback comments that we would give, that might say, you know, good use of adjectives, to develop you need to have some conjunctions or whatever. Instead of that, you could just say, wow, that sounds like a really nice day out, or oh, I'm so sorry to hear about, whatever. Just a general comment on the sorts of subjects they've been writing about. So it could be a much more, just a general, I've read this and I appreciate what you wrote, that sort of comment. So then, initially I did all the marking. I was at a school where that was just about manageable. And I, you know, as we introduced more and more year groups, I got other people to help with the marking. So I got a spreadsheet up, and I would have the name of the pupil. My normal thing is I like to have dates of birth, and I've got them every time, because that's something you often have to look up as a Senko. So words per minute. So didn't need to write that they'd done 84 words, it's just 8.4. Okay, words per minute is the first column. Then it would be errors, so the number of actual errors. So there are 12 errors, for example. Then it would be the percentage accuracy. So you work out of the number of words they've done, how many, you know, what is the percentage accuracy of the words. So it means if they've done a longer piece or a shorter piece, you still get a percentage accuracy. So that gives you some form of comparison. If you've got something that's got 12 errors and then something that's got say 15 errors, you think, oh, they're getting more errors, but they've actually written twice as much. That you want to know the relativity of that, so percentage accuracy. Then you do the analysis of the spelling errors, and this is the bit where you really have to think, what is this telling me? So is it phonically accurate? So have they spelled the word, for example, house, H-O-W-S, house. That's correct. I mean, it says house, but it doesn't matter. It's phonically accurate. That would go in that column. The next one is close phonics. So if they've got, for mouse or house, go back to house, they've got H-O-O-S-E, hoose. House, hoose is close. So that would be in the close phonics. Then you have visual. So does it look like the word? So you know how you can do words where you do the shape of the word. Is it roughly, well, it looks right, but it's not quite there. Then you look for omissions. Are there any omissions in the word? Are there sounds that are missed out? Quite often you might find somebody misses a medial sound, so they might write spit for split, something like that, where you've got consonant blends, adjacent consonants. You may well find one of those consonants dropped, or it could be a vowel sound. You might find that it's always the omitted sound is always at the beginning of the word or the end of the word. Is there an issue with the hearing? It throws up all sorts of questions. So then you have additions. So some people add an extra sound to words. So you might, I don't know, I can't think of an example, but you know, just an extra sound that isn't actually in the word, maybe a whole extra syllable. And you get, like with remember, you often get remember. They miss the middle syllable. But sometimes with a word like necessary, you might have necessary, if you see what I mean, that whole extra, because there's so much, it's just overload, put in a little bit extra. Then you have reversals, and with reversals, I've said this before, we have to be careful. It's worth making a note whether it's a reversal of the shape the orientation of the letter, or the order of the sound in the word. So split for spilt is a reversal of the order of those two sounds, but beb for bed is a reversal of the shape of the letter. So is it an order of letters that's been reversed, or is it the shape, the actual symbol itself? They've mistook that letter for that letter. With that, there's a caution. I've said it several times. P, b are the same sound, but one is voiced and one is unvoiced. So that could be a hearing thing as opposed to a dyslexia reversing the letter. And then you have a column for other, for those words that you look at and for the life of you can't work out what it says. You just sort of like, no, haven't got a clue. They're going to have to read this to me for me to know what you're trying to say. So they're the sort of bizarre spelling choices. Now the reason for all of those is that there is progress. If somebody is spelling in the bizarre column, and you notice that as you go through, because what you do is you have the same pupil in your spreadsheet, the same pupil under itself, and then I switch background colour for the change of pupil. So I know at a glance where my pupils have changed, but I can take one pupil and see, oh, they've done 8 free writes now because they've been with us for that long. And oh look, what's happening is they're moving from the bizarre other spelling choices. They've moved through a few of them, and now actually most of their spelling choices are close phonics, or they are phonically accurate. That is showing me tremendous progress, which you cannot see in a straightforward spelling test. Spelling test, it's right or it's wrong. In this analysis of the spelling, you can see that there is progress. But you can also see if there's a pattern. They're always missing out sounds. Do we need to get the hearing checked? We need to do some phonological awareness work to see what's going on there with these omitted sounds. So by doing it in this way, you can actually break down the spelling issues and build on it. It's not just about, I know what it is. It's what we can then do with that. It's the teaching that can then come from that. It's also a way of saying to a child who's going, I've still got 5 out of 10 in my spelling test. Yes, but you're getting so much better because your spellings were like this, and now look at them, they are so much better. You are, I can read every word. I actually can read the entire thing you've written, whereas before I had to sort of ask you to read it to me because it was a little bit, couldn't quite work out what it was. So yes, you've made progress. We can give praise to children who are still getting the same basic spelling score each week, but actually say, look, you are making progress. Now, with praise, it's got to be genuine. Otherwise, a lot of children who have got low self-esteem, they just don't want to know. They're like, yeah, right, you would say that, you want me to feel better. But if you can say, no, look, when I did your free write last, the time before last, look, all your spellings were down here. Look at them now, they're moving up, they're moving towards this phonics. That is so much better, and you've got a genuine thing to say. Really, really important that it can be genuine. So the next bit, the add-on if you like, is that I've now got this section for notes. So I have like language, so the type of language being used, the composition, so how well composed is the piece of writing. And I might write, sometimes I write things like poem, if they've decided to write a poem, or a list, if they've just written a list. It gives me an idea of the way, what they have composed. Vocabulary. It could be the spellings have got worse, but the vocabulary has just gone through the roof. It's fantastic, it's phenomenal. They've now got the confidence to use those incredibly superior words. They're like, wow, you talked about that being a scintillating evening. Wow. Then it doesn't matter that you didn't spell scintillating correctly. You've got it close phonics, but wow, you've used an amazing word. The grammar is really useful because you quite often pick up on things. If you've got children who have English as an additional language, you can then see, oh look, they're not using the article, for example. Oh, there's a lot of subject-verb agreement needs to be worked on. And then something for punctuation. So it could be there's no punctuation. It could be, and again, by just putting your language, it could be that you use weak or poor or good or sound or excellent, outstanding, whatever you want to use as your language. So long as you've got consistency, and you know what that means, you can tell if there's progress. But that it could be that there's no punctuation at all, and then the next time actually, oh look, there's full stops, or oh, we've got some capital letters. The final column is the biggie, that's the notes. So you might want to say, for example, if you've got a word that is misspelled and the same word has been misspelled 6 times, that shows up as 6 errors. And so it's important to know that actually it was only one spelling mistake in reality, but it was done 6 times. So you might want to say in your notes, you know, same word misspelled 6 times. You might want to say something like, check up on this. If there's something in the actual content that's made you feel a bit, oh, I wonder what's going on there, maybe we need to see if everything's okay. It could be that you've noticed it's very, like I said before, the EAL type of issue. You could make notes about handwriting, you know, virtually illegible or handwriting improving, because by doing it all in the one book you can flip back. So I can see that was illegible. Oh look, I can read all of this. Handwriting improved. Whereas otherwise, for most people, I might not want to bother with the handwriting. Now, I chose to do this for every child in the school. One of the advantages of that is that I could get a sense of the norm. When you're working a lot with special needs, you can forget what the norm is. Your norm changes. You get so used to working with that. So if you've got a sense of where everyone is, that can be really useful. It also means you're going to spot your more able people. You can find out so much about the children. So I would do this with everything, you know, every child, and I would do this whole analysis, the type, the number of spelling errors, the number of words per minute. I found out there were certain children who weren't on my radar, but boy did they take a long time to get started. And there were processing issues, which I might not have picked up because their writing was fantastic, but they weren't doing much. And what I would see is, I'd talk to the teacher and it would say, yeah, they took ages to start, but they actually did a lot of words considering how little time they spent writing because of all that thinking time. But also the language, so the type of errors, the language, this whole picture. Now this is how I would do it for the writing. If your subject is, you know, maths, science, history, whatever, there are ways you can, you know, do something similar. Find ways, it could be to do with emotional development, whatever. Find ways to map those small steps of progress, but also to highlight those areas of extra support that are needed. Now, if you want the template, please just message me. So you can message me through my website. All my contact details are there. So www.pleasemissplease.co.uk. That is all lowercase. www.pleasemissplease.co.uk. And if you message me, you can have a copy of the template. I'm giving that away. I just want it out there. I want people using things. I want whatever happens to make it easier for our children and for us to actually do the best we can to support them and to see how they're developing. Thank you.